Well, welcome everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Robert and I'm one of the pastors here at Epicentre Church. And if you're new, if you're visiting this morning, huge welcome to you all. To probably back up a little bit, support everything that Evie said, plus the op shop said, you will never experience a birthday party like the op shop celebrations, those short celebrations from morning tea or whatever it is. So if you want to experience it, this is what you need to do. You just need to join the op shop. And if you really want to experience it, this is what you do. If your birthday is on Wednesday, turn up on Tuesday. And then you get the celebration on Wednesday. Is that right, Evie? Yeah. And then, because you've been there for 2 days, you'll think, oh my gosh, I can't leave. This is too good. I'm not going back to work. I'm going to retire. I'm going to do whatever it is. The op shop is fantastic. Evie is doing an incredible job with the team, through the food pantry, through the donations, through the connections with community. Evie, we are so grateful for you. So grateful for you. So we are literally in the middle of a 3-part series called Walk It Out, where we're looking at our mission as a church. And if you come here consistently, you will have heard it a couple of times, once or twice. Obviously, it's something that we open the service with, we start with, we share about. Chris shared it this morning. Our mission looks like this, that we're a church that strives to embrace people, embrace Jesus, and empower leaders. So last week we started this series, obviously, with this is what it looks like, or this is what we strive to do in embracing people. How we actively try and outwork that, and the key thing that we kind of looked at, or the idea we posed this question, or I did anyways. Whether you guys posed the question in your minds, I don't know, but I did. Posed the question of there's an array of thoughts or statements, like there's words like believe, behave, belong, and the question I opened with was, well, when it comes to church and coming to church, which order should those words exist in? And because we're a church that is about embracing people, this is what we believe is that you belong here before you believe. That you belong here before you necessarily behave. You belong here if you want to come to church, check church out. If you're online, you belong here. If you're in person here, you belong here. If you have a horrendous past, you belong here. If you're struggling with sin currently, you belong here. No matter what it is that you are going through, this is what we believe, that church, not just this church, just church in general, it should be a place where we belong first, and then what follows out of that is, at some point, you'll discover this relationship with this person called Jesus that the majority of us have discovered, and then you'll start believing, and then after that, at some point, you will start behaving accordingly. And so that's what we talked about last week, and then we're moving forward into this week, which is we're about embracing Jesus. So there's embracing people, and then there is embracing Jesus. Now, before I get into it, what we try to do consistently here is when we're talking, we're trying to share with multiple audiences. So I realize that some of you coming, you're sitting on the fence as to whether this Jesus character is interesting, has any value, any meaning in your life, whether church has value, whether the Bible has value, or Christianity has value. So we very much try to communicate with people, realizing that we've got two audiences sitting in the room, people that agree with Christianity or the Bible or on a journey of, and people that are still on coming to that journey. But when it comes to this series specifically, we're talking to the people that you've made a commitment, specifically this morning. You've already made a commitment to follow Jesus. And if you're a visitor this morning, well, this is specifically talking to the people that are here at our church. You can take this back and you can apply it in your church. You can apply it wherever you go. But specifically, I just want to make it clear this morning, the audience that we're specifically aiming for. So if you're not a Christian, if you're teetering on that, it doesn't mean you get to sign off. I reckon there's some really good stuff that you'll get out of it this morning. So when it comes to this idea of embracing Jesus, perhaps the question would be what does embracing Jesus look like? What does connecting with him on a deeper level actively look like? And one of the responses might be, well, embracing Jesus looks like starting a consistent Bible reading plan. I'm going to get up, I'm going to read my Bible. I might open up the Bible on what's it called? It's just called the Bible, isn't it? It's just called the Bible app. Open up the Bible app, choose a study plan maybe, choose a reading plan. Maybe you go to the front of your book, of your Bible, your hard copy of your Bible, if you've got those things, if they exist anymore. Chris does. And you choose a reading plan and you go through it, and it might be a 1-year track through the Bible. Maybe that is how you embrace Jesus. Or maybe embracing Jesus is, I'm going to have a consistent prayer meeting with myself. And I'm not going to just do it in the car because it was the last thing that I thought of, but I'm going to make space to do it when I get up in the morning. I'm going to read my Bible and I'm going to start praying while I'm having breakfast, before the kids interrupt me, before life begins. That's going to be how I embrace Jesus. Or maybe it's like that I'm going to listen to worship music instead of rock music, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be that, or I don't go to a church, or I go to church and I go to church consistently, but I'm going to start going to small group. And so we have, like a whole lot of us would have differing thoughts and opinions on what embracing Jesus looks like. Perhaps it's diving into the Bible, it's engaging in a healthy, active prayer life. If you're a full-blown Pentecostalist, maybe I'm just going to start speaking in tongues, only that and nothing else. You'd be weird, but maybe it's engaging and never missing church, or it's stepping up and going to small group. And all of these things, like I would say that they're a form of embracing Jesus, and they are embracing Jesus, but we look at them as generally so often as Christians, well, that's the pinnacle of embracing Jesus. Once I do that, like I'm out working, I'm actively embracing with Jesus, I'm connecting with Jesus on a deep level. If I'm reading my Bible, if I'm praying, if I'm going to church, if I'm attending a small group, if I'm doing that, I'm embracing Jesus. But the reality is all that is great, but all that is just a starting point. Reading your Bible, fundamental if you're a Christian, but it's a starting point. Praying, fundamental if you're a Christian, but it's a starting point. There's plenty of people that read their Bible, and there's plenty of people that read their Bible plus pray, but don't live a life that looks like they are actively embracing Jesus. There's plenty of people that read their Bible every morning, pray every morning, go to church every Sunday, go to small group once a week, but don't live a life that actively looks like they are embracing Jesus. So all this stuff is fundamental, and all this stuff is important. If you're a Christian, if you're choosing to go like in the direction of a relationship with Jesus, it's important. But all this stuff is just a starting point. It's not the end result of what embracing Jesus should look like. The truth is, embracing Jesus is this. Embracing Jesus is living a life that reflects Jesus. If you go through Jesus' life and ministry, and if you were to look at what the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, like the Christian leaders of their day, well, they did plenty of praying. They did plenty of reading the scriptures. They did plenty of that, but they didn't live a life that actively reflected that they were following Jesus. Embracing Jesus is living a life that reflects Jesus. It lives a life that reflects, this is what Jesus looks like. This is how Jesus behaves. This is how Jesus carries on. This is how Jesus acts. That is what embracing Jesus realistically looks like. Now, are any of us perfect? No. Am I perfect? Very much not. I thank you, you kind person. You don't know me well enough yet. What's that? Oh, yeah, amen. Amen. By knowing, like if you followed me around every day, you'd find parts of my life, plenty of parts of my life that don't reflect a life that represents Jesus in everything. If I followed you around, it'd be the same thing. None of us are perfect. So what I'm not trying to say is that we are striving perfection, but what we're striving to do is put ourselves literally under the lordship of Jesus and allow him to lead and guide. And so when opportunities come for us to do something that wouldn't reflect that I'm following Jesus, we choose to reflect him, to follow him. So last week we shared this story of Jesus calling one of his disciples, Matthew, who at that point was called Levi. Now, Levi was a tax collector. And so last week, we talked about Jesus reaching out and calling a tax collector and saying, hey, you know what? You're a messed up person. Like, you're not in a really good industry. No one likes you, but you get to come and follow me. Why? Because you belong before you behave. And so Jesus calls him. And so last week, we went through this story of Jesus engaging with this tax collector. This week, we're going through a similar story, but it's not Jesus calling one of his disciples or 12 apostles or followers, however you want to call him, but it's still a story of Jesus interacting with a tax collector. And this tax collector is Zacchaeus. not Zacharias. This tax collector is Zacchaeus. And so the story goes like this from Luke's gospel, where it says this, that Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. And there was a man there named Zacchaeus. This guy, he's just like Levi was, like we read about last week. He's a tax collector. And so the really quick story would be this, that tax collectors, if you don't realize who they were or how they operated, they're not liked any better back then than what they're like today. But what they would do back then is, so they were employed by Rome, because the Israelite people, the Jewish people, were under Roman occupation. And so they're employed by the Roman government to go and take taxes from the Jewish people and give it back to the Roman government. And so what the tax collectors would do, or was known that they would do, was that if they were taxing XYZ on the dollar, well, they would up the tax and take some for themselves, pocket some for themselves, give what they had to give to Rome, and get their wage at the same time. So they were able to double dip their income. Like, they were able to pull money from their wage, but then at the same time, they would up the taxes so that they would get more money, so they had some cream on top of everything. So hence, nobody liked them. Nobody liked them because they realized that they were robbing from them, but like, there was no ombudsman. You can't go and complain to the Roman army. They're going to be like, I don't care. As long as we get our cut, I don't care what they charge you. As long as we get what we need and we want, I don't care what they charge you. Rome didn't care, but everyone else cared. And so Jesus, he's walking along and he sees this guy named Zacchaeus. And he was a chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. Why become rich? Well, I think I just explained that. He became really rich because he was double dipping. And he'd been doing this for a long time. He wasn't just this like new employee. He was a chief tax collector. Suggesting he'd done this for a long time. He had risen up the ranks. Like, he was a big deal. He tried to, and so as Jesus was coming along, he tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going past that way. And so he's wanting to engage with Jesus. He's wanting to get a better look at Jesus, but he's too short. No one likes him, so they're not letting him through to be able to see anything, to be able to get anywhere. So he's only got one thing to do. So he runs ahead, and then he climbs this tree, realizing the crowds, they cannot stop or impede his view now. And so when Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus, and he called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said. I like this, because it suggests, similar to last week, that Jesus knew this guy. Jesus had interactions with this guy. This wasn't this one in a lifetime moment where Zacchaeus for the first time has had an engagement with Jesus. The suggestion would be that Jesus has engaged with Zacchaeus before, has seen him before, has spoken to him before, realizes, knows what he does, how he lives, his business dealings, his all of that. Which is kind of important, because for some people it might be, well, Jesus called to these people not realizing what they were. But I love that with Jesus, that you belong before you behave, and necessarily before you believe. And Jesus realized what it was that Zacchaeus did. He realized what it was that Levi did, and he still called them. And he still called out them, and he said, Zacchaeus, come here. Levi, like we talked about last week, come here. Because for Jesus, and this is like reiterating last week, when it comes to us and our relationship with Jesus, we belong in a relationship with Jesus before we behave and before we believe. When it comes to church, you belong before you believe and before you behave. You belong, no matter what it is, what you've done. If you're a tax collector, if you're this, or what other examples you want to come up with your head. And so Jesus calls out, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. And so this is nearly like mirroring last week. Like last week, the same thing happens where Jesus is asked and invited to go to a tax collector's house for dinner. But last week, he gets invited. This week, he's like, you know what? I am inviting myself to your place. And so he says, I must be a guest in your home today. And so Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased, just like last week with Levi, saying this, like, he is going to be a guest of a notorious sinner, and they're upset. And so they're grumbling about this. They're not happy about it because they don't like him. And like we looked at last week, they don't see him as being worthy of being in Jesus' presence, let alone having Jesus enter into his place. So meanwhile, all this is going on. So there's this argument going on. You've got the people, like you've got the peanuts in the corner, the peanut gallery are talking, and they're loud and they're saying all these things. We don't like this. We're not happy with this. He's in Zacchaeus' house. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. We're not interested. We don't like this. And I don't know what Jesus is saying, if he's saying anything or if he's just letting it go. But you got people over here saying this. Like there's commotion going on. And then meanwhile, Zacchaeus, it says, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and he says something. So he's the guy in the middle, so to speak. He's the guy that Jesus has come to his house. He's the guy that's tried to put on a nice spread. He's the one that's trying to do the right thing by Jesus. And all these people are saying this over here. And so he's listening to this. He's listening to this commotion go on. And he stood beside the Lord, being Jesus, and he said this. He says, you know what? You know what? He's saying, if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. If I've cheated anyone, I'm going to give them back, not just a little bit. I'm not going to just give it back what it is that I owe them. I'm not just going to give them back like double the amount or with a little bit of interest on it. I'm going to give them back 4 times as much as I have cheated out of them. And he's saying this because he realizes there's grumbling going on over here because of his job, because of his character, because of his integrity. And so he realizes that I need to do something about this. I've had this encounter with Jesus. Jesus is here. I've got all this in my face happening right now. I need to do something about this. So he says, you know what, I'll pay them back. I'll pay them back an oodle. I'll pay them back 4 times as much. And Zacchaeus, he was saying that because he's saying this, I have been so touched, I have been so transformed, changed, that this is what I'm going to do. Because I have been so touched, because I've been so transformed, because I've been so changed, because I've had such an encounter with this person called Jesus, this is what I am going to do. I'm going to give this stuff back. Embracing Jesus is living a life that reflects Jesus. And this is what Zacchaeus is outworking here. That he's outworking a life that reflects the person that he's just encountered. See, so many of us get to this point where embracing Jesus looks like just saying that I'm embracing Jesus, just reading my Bible, just going to church, just doing this. But embracing Jesus, there should be actions that come with it. Actions that reflect something of our life, a life that says that I follow someone. And that someone is Jesus. And so Zacchaeus realizes this. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to do something about this because I want to live a life that reflects Jesus. And so Jesus responded. His response was this. He says, you know what, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. And so Jesus is saying that this guy has shown that he has truly received salvation. And on top of that, he's truly is an Israelite. He's truly a Jew. He's truly a Christian. And he showed that. How's he showed that? Because he said, I will pay back. I will do something that reflects the belief that I claim to follow, that I'm going to follow it out with actions, not just words. And so Jesus continues. He says, for the Son of Man, he did this. He came to seek and save those who are lost. Embracing Jesus is living a life that reflects Jesus. However, a whole lot of us at some point find ourselves in a really similar position to Zacchaeus. Maybe it's not people are grumbling and whinging because we're coming to church or because we're reading our Bible, but grumbling because perhaps something is not lining up. Because for a lot of us as Christians, and this exists in this room, this exists in every church, that while embracing Jesus should look like this, living a life that reflects Jesus, plenty of Christians are living a life that just reflects themselves. A whole lot of us as Christians claim to be Christians, but live a life that reflects me, my desires, what I want to do, what I think is right, what I think is good, what I think is healthy, what fills me, what satisfies me. So many of us as Christians, that's what we end up doing. Like so many Christians read the Bible, but have anger management issues. Plus, insert whatever other issues that you want in there. How many of you know that really angry Christian? I do. Anyone else? How many of you know like that Christian that just they love to extend the truth? They love to engage in small white lies. You could go through example after example, and this is not to condemn anyone or put anyone down or say that you're a bad person, you're not good, that God doesn't love you, that you're not holy, but to highlight that just because we read our Bible does not make us necessarily a great Christian living an active lifestyle that reflects something. Well, that would suggest something different, because plenty of us read our Bible, but there's issues that go on, or we listen to worship music but have no actions that reflect worship in their lives. And so the example here would be that David, he's one of the kings of Israel. And this guy, King David, in the Old Testament, I think it's in 2 Samuel somewhere, there's this happening where God ends up coming to David and he says to him, I want you to go to this particular place, this particular land, space of like area that you don't own, and I want you to construct an altar there and give me an offering. And so David goes to this place where God tells him, I want you to go and build an altar. I want you to build an altar on this place. And then I want you to give an offering to me. And so David goes to the landowner and he says, this is what God has told me to do. That you need that we are to construct an altar here, and we're gonna make sacrifice to God. And so David says to him, how much do you want for your land? And the landowner, he says, no, I'm not charging the king. And on top of that, I'm not charging God for this. I'm going to give it to the king because you're going to give it to God. And David's response was this. He says, I am not going to give God something that has cost me nothing. I am not going to give God something that has cost me nothing. So many of us, when it comes to our worship, our position of worship, say in church, our position of worship perhaps in the car, our position of worship in our home looks like one where we're singing worship songs and we're lifting our hands, exalting God, praising God, but our actions reflect no worship. There's no sacrifice in our worship. While that completely opening and lifting our hands, it is worship, but there should be a lifestyle that reflects that I'm worshiping God with everything that I do, with how I live, with how I act, with how I behave, with how I serve, with how I give. I will not give God something that's cost me nothing. So, and it continues, or like there's a whole lot of us as Christians. We attend church or a small group every Sunday, but on the way, we road rage. Anyone met that really bad driver? That they deserved the horn. They deserved us cutting them off. They deserved when we got round them because they're too slow taking off at the traffic lights, eyeball them. It's kind of amusing, but we all do it. Maybe you're not an angry driver. Maybe it's only me. Maybe it's only me that I'm in the cars with my kids. I was thinking about this the other day, and someone was driving too slow. I'm like, what an idiot. I have determined this person is an idiot based on how I perceive them driving. Or they don't put their indicator on as soon as I think that they should. Or they don't do or they put their brakes on. I remember my father used to always say this, and so it's stuck in my head. And he would have used the idiot word as well. But you never hit the brakes and then put the indicator on. It's confusing. No one likes it. Don't be that person. And then I see someone that puts their foot on the brakes. What are they doing? Then 3 seconds later, the indicator comes on. I'm like, what is this person? Thank you, Weston. Thank you. You're the same thing. And I do that in front of my kids. And what does that say? I do that perhaps with the person that's jumped in the car with me that I'm having to take somewhere. And what does that say? What does that reflect about who it is that I'm following? What does that reflect about how I'm allowing Jesus to lead me? What does that reflect? I was reading really quickly an article this morning that was, I think it was from Barna Research, and they're talking about the main reason why people aren't interested in coming to church. It was an American study, but I think it was like 32% was the highest reason. There was multiple different reasons, but 32% of people didn't like to come to church because of how Christians behave. And the article went on and used pretty well actually that example, that people are watching us whether we realize it or not. My kids are watching me when I'm sitting in the car. How do I reflect? How do I behave? The people that I work with, that I work for, they're watching me. The person that serves me at McDonald's or serves me at the restaurant or serves me wherever it is, they're watching how that we live and behave. And they may not necessarily know that you're a Christian or anything, but they're watching and that they are making a determination. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a person that when they make the determination of, I like that guy. I want to get to know him. I'm just a checkout person at some random place. I don't know how I'm ever going to meet them again, but I would like to meet them because they make me feel good. I'd like to be that type of person that engages with people in such a way that they feel better of after interacting with me, not because I'm necessarily someone good, but because I represent someone exceedingly good. I think there should be something spilling out of us. Not just words, not just thoughts, not just deeds. Embracing Jesus, it's doing this. It's living a life that reflects Jesus. When I drive the car, it's driving in a way that reflects Jesus. When I engage with people at the shop, it's living a life and engaging with them in a way that reflects Jesus. Not just coming to church on Sundays, not just getting up and doing a devotion, not just praying at this hour, not just actively living, outworking a lifestyle. It says in every part of my life, I embrace a relationship with Jesus and I allow him in and I allow him to lead. I allow him to lead. So there's two reflective actions that perhaps embracing Jesus could look like as far as the practical outworkings. And it looks like this. It's like saying no in order to say yes. And number two would be this: doing what you can with what you've got. Saying no to say yes, and then doing what you can with what you've got or what's in your hand. And so saying no to saying yes, it looks like this. If you say yes to everything inadvertently, you are saying no to something else. If you say yes to everything, you'll say no to something else. If you say yes to a relationship with Jesus, realize this, that we've said no to something else. If we say yes to a relationship with Jesus, talking to Christians, if you've said yes to a relationship with Jesus, you should be saying no to something else. Otherwise, I'm not saying that you're not a Christian. I'm not saying that you don't love God. I'm not saying that you're not going to heaven. I'm not saying that you don't have a relationship. I'm not saying that you don't belong here. But if we say yes to a relationship with Jesus, but live however it is that we want, then we're just that person that reads our Bible, prays, goes to church, maybe goes to small group. But every other part of our life reflects nothing of a relationship that says, I am going to embrace Jesus. If Zacchaeus said yes to Jesus, but at the same time, yes to his personal desire to make money at all costs and add a little bit more tax on the tax bill, by default, he'd be saying no to following Jesus in action. He'd be saying no to following Jesus in action. It would be speech. He would have still brought Jesus around to his house. He wasn't obligated to do anything. Jesus didn't tell him that you need to give all this money away. He wasn't obligated to do it. He could have been a follower of Jesus, done this, had Jesus to his house, done nothing. Whether it got mentioned in the Bible in the end, I don't know. But he could have done that. He wasn't obligated to do any more, but he decided to do more because he wanted to live a life that reflected one that was embracing Jesus in every way, shape, or form. Jesus says it this way in Matthew. He says, if you love your father or mother more than you love me, you're not worthy of being mine. Or if you love your son or daughter more than me, you're not worthy of being mine. And like, okay, it's not talking about literally going and having fights and warring and sparring and things like that. But what Jesus is talking about is this. If you choose me, you're going to have to say no to something else. If you choose me and mum or dad disapprove, you've got to say no to something else. If you choose me and they don't agree, then you've got to say no to something else. And it looks like this. Maybe you're with, maybe it's like this. You've got friends or family or people, and they say, you need to stop praying. This is ridiculous. You need to stop praying. You need to stop doing this. You need to stop engaging in this prayer life. This is just ridiculous. What will you do in that? You just keep on praying. If you say yes to following Jesus, you have to say you're saying no to something else. So it continues on. Like, stop engaging with Christians. Maybe your friends are telling you that. Like, you've started engaging in a relationship with Jesus, and you've got this different group of friends now that they're weird. They go to church, they say weird things, because let's be honest, everyone that comes to church, we're a bit weird. If you haven't worked it out, you haven't been coming to church for long enough. I like the weirdness of church. And now they've got some weird friends, and they're old friends, your old friends over here. Like, why are you mixing with the happy clappers? Why are you doing this? Someone else used something the other day, and it was brilliant. It wasn't happy clappers. It was like, what was it? I don't know. I heard a different one. I've never heard that, but I want to put that in the piggy bank, and I want to bring it out, and I can't. I've forgotten it already. But anyways, like, why are you engaging with these people? Like, they are ridiculous. They like, you're spending too much time there. Why are you doing that? Why would you engage with them? Why would you do that? And so you need to stop engaging with the Christians. This is what you do. You'd keep engaging with them, and maybe a step further, it maybe means this, that you need to separate yourself, at least for a period, from the people that are trying to bring you backwards. Embracing Jesus actively looks like a lifestyle of embracing Jesus, not just saying that I am and pretending that I am and living however it is that I want. Or you need to stop believing in Jesus. You would keep believing in Jesus. Like, there's meant to be actions that come. There's meant to be stances that come. There's certain things that we should be taking a stand on as Christians, that I will not do that. You want me to do that? I used to do that. I'm not going to do that. I can't do that anymore. Why? Because I've said yes to Jesus. I've said yes to Jesus. Saying yes to Jesus should mean this: saying no to getting stoned, sleeping with your boyfriend or girlfriend, getting drunk, swearing, lying, judging people, gossiping. The list can go on, and it can go on, and it can go on, and it can go on. And it's what I'm not wanting you to do is write down everything that you shouldn't do, because that's actually not going to be helpful. More the realization of this: when you say yes to a relationship with Jesus, we should realize this, that I am saying no to something else. You know what? That should be consistent in every area of your life. If you say yes to marrying that person, you're saying no to something else. You're saying no to working ridiculous hours like you have been in order to build a relationship with them. Like, the example goes everywhere. So you say, like, if you say yes, you're saying no to something else. Or number two is this: doing what you can with what you've got. Zacchaeus had this. He had an incredible amount of wealth. And this is not to say that if you've got an incredible amount of wealth that you need to give all of it away. Like, this is what Zacchaeus had. This was what was in his hand. And Jesus, because of his connection with Jesus, he's like, you know what? I want to do something to reflect the relationship that I have, to reflect the transformation that is taking place in my heart. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what I can with what's in my hand. And so Zacchaeus, he suggests, like, I'm going to give up to 4 times of it back. You've got something. If you're sitting here, if you're watching online, you've got something. You have an ability, you have a talent, you're good at something, you're passionate about something, you're capable of something. Like, all of us have something that's in our hand, on our heart, something that we can outwork, something that we can do. And the big thing would be this, that we use it. You do what you can with what you've got, and you actively serve. That we actively serve Jesus. And the suggestion would be this, that we can't serve Jesus without serving people. Serving Jesus will always be connected with serving people. If you're serving Jesus and it has nothing to do with people, you're probably not serving Jesus at all. You're serving your own desires and masquerading it like that you are serving Jesus. Like, Evie serves Jesus, but she serves a plethora of people. She serves a community, don't you, Evie? You could go through person after person, example after example, whether on staff here at church, whether they're serving here at church or they're serving out somewhere else, when they're serving Jesus, they're actively serving people. James says it this way. Jesus' brother James says, whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God, our Father. Meaning this, that the gifts and abilities that you have, they're a gift from God. If you have a talent, if you have a passion, maybe I'll take that one back, because maybe you have passions in areas that aren't necessarily good. Wholesome passions. Because there's some passionate things that maybe aren't, some things I was probably passionate about that aren't very wholesome. Let's continue. So that, like, if you've got a talent, if you've got a natural ability, if you've got, like, that's something that's been given to you from God that is to be used for God. Embracing Jesus should propel us to actively want to serve him with our gifts, our talents, our resources, which looks like this. If you are, as an example, musical, you do what you can with what you've got. So if you're musical, it looks like this, that you might play an instrument, sing. I don't know what it is, but you would engage with that. Or if you're good at communicating, you would share with people. You know what? We need more small groups. Adam is over here and he heads up our small groups. If you're good at communicating, why don't you go see Adam and see if you can start a small group and share with people, engage with people, build with people, lift people, communicate with people. Or maybe you love to care for people. You're just passionate about it. Maybe do this. Start connecting with them. Actively start engaging with them. Grab someone, take them out for coffee. If you're a person that loves to care for people and you're like, I've never thought that I could use that as a way of serving Jesus, grab someone after the service and take them out for a coffee. Take them out for a coffee and get to know them. People are desperate for a relationship. We do what we can with what we've got. What was in Zacchaeus' hand was his monetary ability to serve. I don't know what it is that's in your hand, but you've got something in your hand, in your heart, in your talents that you can use to serve Jesus. If you have enough, maybe like Zacchaeus, you give, or if you like coffee. If you like coffee, make coffee. Invite people into your house. Make them coffee. Join the cafe team out there. Serve coffee. Bring people in, engage in a relationship with them. Do what you can with what's in your heart and actively serve Jesus. But serving Jesus will always look like we're serving people, because the truth is that you cannot embrace Jesus without embracing people, and embracing people starts with embracing his church. We can't embrace Jesus without embracing people, and you can't embrace people without embracing his church. The two go hand in hand. The two are connected. Embracing Jesus looks like a life that actively reflects a relationship with Jesus. So I've got 10 things, 10 quick things that look like actively embracing Jesus, that look like outworking a relationship that's actively embracing Jesus. Number one is this: embracing Jesus is choosing to actively follow him, which means actively walking away from sin. Actively making a choice that I'm not going to do that because I've said yes to following him. Number two, embracing Jesus is going to be the most personally confronting thing that you do. Why is that? We'll probably go back to the first one. If it's not confronting, just wait. It's going to get confronting, because at some point Jesus is going to say, I don't want you doing that. I don't want you living that way. I don't want you acting like that. I don't want you behaving like that. At some point it should confront us and confront us to change. We'll all know the stories of the major pastors and leaders that have fallen, so to speak, fallen from grace, had scandals that have turned up in the media. Why is that? Well, probably because number one, they didn't actively, or they stopped following at some point. And number two, they stopped allowing themselves to be confronted by Jesus and allowing him to lead them and guide them. Number three, you cannot embrace Jesus without embracing people. The two go hand in hand. They're one and the same. If you think that you're embracing Jesus and serving Jesus and following Jesus and people aren't involved, you're not doing it. You're just serving what it is that you want to do. People will always be involved, whether you like them or not. I get that not everyone is a people person. I'm one of those people. My wife is one of those people. She's more so than me. And it doesn't mean that you're not gifted or you don't enjoy people, you don't love people or anything like that. But even for those of you that struggle with people, you know what? Serving Jesus requires you to serve people. Number 4, embracing Jesus is embracing his church with all its faults and all its blemishes. This church is messed up. And I enjoy it. It's messed up. Why is it messed up? Because it's full of people. And people are messed up. And I'm not saying that you're messed up or that you're bad or you're wicked or you're vile or anything like that. But the truth is this, that the church is full of people that make messes, that do messy things, that make mistakes, that are messed up. I'm one of those messed up people. You're one of those messed up people. Embracing Jesus looks like embracing his church in all its blemishes and in all its faults. But that doesn't mean that it's not the bride that Jesus wants and is coming back for. We embrace his church with all its mess, realizing that we are one of the ones that causes the mess. Number 5, embracing Jesus is embracing the Bible. So contrary to everything that I said, like it's a starting point, but it's a foundational starting point that I pick it up, I engage with it, I allow it in, and I do more than that. I allow it to minister to me. I allow it to engage my lifestyle or orchestrate my steps. I don't pick it up and just read it like a novel. Like, oh, yeah, that was cool. I ask it this question, or ask Jesus this question: what do you want me to do with what I've just read from your word? How do I outwork that? Number 6 is embracing Jesus is asking God to search your heart and point out all that is wrong. Fun times, not at all. But if you're a Christian, this is what, and you haven't done this, my encouragement would be to do this. You spend some time this week that you sit down and say, God, this is what I want you to do. I want you to search my heart and I want you to point out in me all that is wrong. Why? Because I want to live a life that's actively embracing you, and I don't want something in there that isn't bringing you glory and honor. I want to allow you to lead me, lead my heart, lead my life. If you haven't done it, I encourage you to do it. Make it a consistent spot check that God, search my heart. What is it that you don't want that's in there? Number 7, embracing Jesus requires you to admit to God and to people when you have done wrong. If you've done wrong, if you've sinned, if you've messed up, what's what you do? That you connect with God and you would tell him, but you'd also connect with those people and you'd share with them. You know what? What I did wasn't right. It hurt you and I'm sorry and I shouldn't have done that. Or Jesus, I realize that what I've done isn't right, and I'm sorry, please forgive me. Like that's what you do under relationship. I know if you've been in church for long enough, you've probably like gone through or heard of the debates of like all of grace and all of law, all of rules and regulations and what have you. And sometimes it leans on the side of, you know what, we don't necessarily need to ask forgiveness of things because we're already forgiven. And you know what? We are already forgiven. But out of relationship with someone, we say, you know what I did wasn't right. What I did wasn't good. What I did hurt you, and I'm sorry for it. We do the same thing with people. We do the same thing for Jesus. Number 8, embracing Jesus requires you to walk away from sin, being selfishness. Saying yes to Jesus inadvertently means you're saying no to something else and you're saying no to sin. Number 9, embracing Jesus requires you to put his desires before your desires. And number 10, embracing Jesus is going against the grain. A lot of them are similar, but it's going against the grain as far as I am going to choose to live this way, and it's not normal. It's not normally how anyone outside of the church would live. Unless you're in the church, no one else is going to live like this. You're going against the grain. Why are we talking about this? Because we want to be a church, we want to be people, specifically for those of you that this is your choice, this is the decision that you've made, that I want to follow Jesus. I want to be a church, I want to be people, I want to be a person that doesn't just make a claim and a statement, but that I'm actively outworking and following him. Embracing Jesus is living a life that reflects Jesus. I want to be a Christian, not a pastor. A Christian that lives a life that reflects Jesus. And I want that for all of us. What I don't want to hear is more scandals in the media from churches. That's realistically because at some point they stopped living a life that reflected Jesus and started living a life that reflected themselves. I'd like to think that doesn't continue on, and the reality is it will. But what I want from us as a church is that we actively pursue him with everything it is that we have and live a life that reflects a relationship with him, a life transformed by him. How about you stand? Let me pray for you. Father, we exalt you this morning. We want to say thank you for your presence. We want to lift you this morning, Father. Lift your name, exalt your name, Jesus. Position you in our hearts and our minds, right where it is that you should be as King of Kings and as Lord of Lords. I want to pray for all of us, God, that we're people that actively reflect a life transformed by you. Not a life transformed by my wants, by my wishes, by my desires, but a life transformed by your presence and by your Spirit. So, Holy Spirit, I just want to pray for every single person that's here this morning, for everyone that's watching online, Jesus. Realizing that some of this is confronting and challenging and difficult depending on what season that we're at in life. But I want to pray, Holy Spirit, that what isn't taken away this morning it's not condemnation, Father, but rather a passion and desire of this is what I want. I want to choose a relationship with him. I want to choose a relationship with you, Father, and I'm going to pursue you with everything. And I want to live a life that reflects a life transformed by the King. And so, Father, I want to pray for every single person this morning, Jesus. I want to pray that you empower them, that you equip them, Jesus. I want to pray that you bring to mind, Jesus, things that you don't want in their lives, God. I want to pray that you bring to mind, Father, or to lead their hearts, Jesus, and lead their minds in the direction that you have in store for them, Father. That we can be people, that we can be individuals, Father, that live a life that reflect a life transformed by your presence. So I want to pray for everyone, Father, that you lead them, that you guide them, and specifically, Jesus, that we're all open with arms, with hearts, with minds, saying, God, come and lead me. In Jesus' name, amen. If you want to chat about any of that, come at the front. I'd love to talk with you. If you're toying with this whole idea of connecting with Jesus and developing a relationship with Jesus, come at the front. I'd love to have a chat with you. Otherwise, head out the front or head out, grab a tea or coffee, and look forward to seeing you guys next week as we wrap it up.